Please. Awesome. Alrighty. Thank you guys for attending. Today's TA call is going to be called Power and Partnership, the Value of Mentorship in Youth Peer Advocacy, and it will be presented by myself. My name is Mayuko Armini Phillips. I'm the Youth Training Coordinator here at Families Together for New York State. I'm dual credentialed as a youth peer advocate with lived experience navigating the mental health system, as well as credentialed as a family peer advocate with experience navigating systems as a caregiver. Alrighty, so now I would like if everyone could please introduce yourself. I would love it if everyone could put this information in the chat, and then if you feel comfortable, you can also take yourself off of mute so that you can share out loud. And in your introduction, please include your name, your pronouns if you'd like to, your role, and what county that you work in. I see Brian. Hi, Brian. Nice to see you today. Hi, Alexandra. Is it Shania? Awesome. Nice to see you. I see Angela's continuing to introduce yourself, so just feel free to include all of that information in the chat. And for some of us, we'll learn a little bit more about you in a very short minute. Alrighty, so now that we're done with introductions, I did want to start this with an icebreaker. And so this is one of my favorite questions because mentorship is often about the things that we didn't know when we started out. So I would love for us to all just take a deep breath and ask ourselves, when you started, what is something that you wish someone had told you? So what's the piece of wisdom that could have changed everything if you would have just heard it sooner? And then if you feel called to share, please feel free to take yourself off of mute. There's no pressure, it's just an open space, but I just want us to be able to reflect on mentorship and why it might matter to each of us. While you guys are thinking, I can also share my thoughts. I think for myself, when I started out as a youth peer advocate, something that I wish someone would have told me was to diligently stay on top of my notes. I think that sometimes when you get really busy and you're trying to adjust to a new role as well as focus on all the different things that have to be done in the pieces, you can fall behind on what is the most simplest parts. But then you realize how difficult it is to really recall that conversation, to really think about what it is that you went over with each individual person. And so I wish that someone would have told me to just stay on top of those things on a daily basis, even if you have to put it into your schedule, even if you have to tell yourself for this 10 minutes after this appointment, that's what I'm going to spend my time on, even if it's just making bullet points. I really wish someone would have told me that. And I see that Jennifer put in the chat how a little bit of connection and support go a long way. Absolutely, I agree with that. Anyone else have any input? Feel free to come off mute or you can put it in the chat as well.
I wish that, of course, when you become YPA, you have to sign a code of ethics. But I wish that somebody had told me that I could use that as a way to share more about my role when there was a little bit of a lack of role clarity in the work that I've done.
I definitely wish that when I first started out, someone would have told me what moral injury was and how to avoid it or take care of yourself if you are going through moral injury.
I love those responses. Does anyone else have anything else that they want to share?
I'll share. I'd say I wish someone would have told me how serious and impactful secondhand trauma, vicarious trauma, I believe it's called, affects our daily lives and basically how to try to avoid that overwhelming. Like it's taught in it's taught or discussed a little, but like really letting you know it's serious and you can't put everything on your shoulders.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up, Angela. I think that you're right. It's one of the things that we touch on in several different trainings, but it's different when you experience it. And it's really difficult to even sometimes catch yourself understanding that that is exactly what you're going through, and then figuring out how to put an action plan in for yourself. So I love all the responses that you guys brought up. And I see that Brian's also seconding those in the chat. Absolutely. I think it's one of the parts that you learn through experience yourself, but it is definitely helpful if you can have a better understanding of what that is and the complexities of what going through both moral injury as well as that kind of post-traumatic stress that's caused by you hearing someone else's trauma and experiencing that with them as well, what that means and what that can do to you, your mental, your emotional, and how to kind of go over how to execute a safety plan for yourself very early on. So I just want to thank you guys so much for sharing about that. So to quickly just go over our learning objectives for today, first I want to ask you guys what mentorship is and what it means to you, and then we'll go over a little bit as to why does mentorship matter, and then we will have an interactive mentorship panel with some panelists that are already here. I'm really excited for you to meet them. So first, I would like to ask all of you, when you think about mentorship, what feelings or words come to mind? Feel free to bring yourself off of mute and share, or you can write your thoughts in the chat. Just remember, again, there's no right or wrong answers. It's just kind of whatever pops up for you. It could be a single word, a memory, a feeling, or even a person. I see that Angela said for her, she thinks about a safe person. Jay said guidance. Jennifer said support. Ooh. Jessica said promotion of growth and support. I really like that promotion of growth part. Role modeling, empowerment. You feel empowered because you helped someone and they feel empowered by getting help. We have knowledge and connections, an individual that can allow me to grow in a secure space, a bridge. Wow, these are awesome responses. I very much like how some of you guys talked about the differences that you could gain from mentorship, as well as what you can give in a mentorship role, as well as just kind of what that space should feel like. So I saw a lot of safe, secure, and so it's definitely a safe space to grow. Absolutely. Alrighty, so I did want to introduce this word map, which does have a lot of those words that we mentioned. And so, mentorship is a supportive relationship where someone with experience helps someone with less experience grow. Mentors can offer guidance, advice, and encouragement to help mentees face challenges in both their lives and work. This is built on a platform of trust and mutual learning. Mentors can share their knowledge, and mentees gain confidence, skills, and perspective. Mentorship isn't just about teaching, it's about growing together. And as we begin to talk about this today, I really want you guys to experience that. And so we do have a panel that we are going to meet, and they can tell you a little bit more about those experiences. Before we get into that, I just wanted to go over some of the benefits that we can see, whether it's for your personal growth, as well as the organizational benefits. So let's dive into why mentorship truly matters, both from a personal standpoint and an organizational standpoint. So first, we'll start with the pink circle. So that's more on a personal level. So mentorship can have profound impacts for a singular person. It helps them to develop their essential skills and career direction. This can offer constructive feedback and goal-setting opportunities. This process not only helps them build their confidence and self-awareness, but can also encourage healthy relationship development and effective communication. Ultimately, this creates a safe space where mistakes are a part of the growth. On an organizational level, which is down here in the green circle, mentorship can strengthen connection and collaboration amongst employees, which is crucial for reducing feelings of isolation and improving the team culture. This can be a catalyst for retention and growth across various roles, which creates a sense of belonging and direction for all involved. And finally, we can think about mentorship from a professional development standpoint. So, mentorship encourages leadership through learning and modeling. This provides a pathway to career growth. This is about fostering an environment where everyone can thrive and learn from each other. So, as we're looking at all these different circles, they do intersect in different places. And so, through mentorship, one might find a better direction of self as to what it is that you want to explore in your career. Different pathways might be known to you, and you can really decide what way you want to grow in your career. It also fosters a sense of belonging where you don't just feel alone or isolated in your role. We talk over and over again in the peer space about peers supervising peers. And so this is one of those spaces where you can learn directly from your peers, and they can help you as you're moving along in your professional journey, as well as your personal journey as well. And then that can ultimately lead to career growth as you're learning new skills that can open up doors to advance, whether it's in the agency that you're a part of, or maybe even seeking something larger than that, whether that's going into advocacy, legislation, and other things as well. So there's lots of different benefits that can kind of coexist once mentorship enters our agencies. And now I would like to introduce our lovely panel. So we have 4 panelists that are with us today. Jay Colgan is a credentialed youth peer advocate, or YPAC, and a New York certified peer specialist with a background in sociology and public policy. He was first to participate in a mentorship pilot project at SCO Family of Services, which supports new YPAs in developing their communication, boundaries, and advocacy skills. Jay is passionate about supporting transgender and neurodivergent youth and promoting inclusive mental health care. We also have Angela Colon-Rentas, who is the Senior Youth and Young Adult Peer Navigator at BIPOC Peak, as well as an artist, peer advocate trainer, and consultant. She's a winner of the National Federation of Families Children's Mental Health Poster Contest in 2008 and a recipient of the 2022 New York State Office of Mental Health What's Great in Our State Youth or Young Adult Award. Angela is also a proud VIP, or very invested parent, with the Children's Agenda, where she continues to advocate for youth and families. We also have Jennifer, who is the Director for Peer Services and High Fidelity Wraparound at SCO Family of Services, excuse me. Jennifer celebrates lived experience across the lifespan, beginning as youth navigating the mental day system to the present day, where her experience has evolved into navigating the systems of care for her 2 children. Jennifer empowers youth and families to use their voice and choice while continuing to expand the family and youth peer workforce at SCO. And our last panelist we have is Lena. Lena is a certified youth peer advocate, behavior technician, and aspiring neuropsychologist. Her biggest motivator is her younger self, little Lena, who reminds her why safe spaces, empathy, and support matter. Through her work, Lena strives to offer others the care and understanding she once needed. and I hope that you will all join me in welcoming our panel. Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my slides so that we can listen to everyone. One second. Alrighty, so my first question I have is for you, Jennifer. And I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to create or engage in mentorship? And how did you identify the need for it in your organization or your personal journey?
So the first thing that inspired me was I wanted to create a space as a supervisor that addressed all of the fears that I had as a supervisee and all of the maybe quote unquote injustices that I felt I experienced as a supervisee. So that was my first thing. And so I went around the agency and I met with different youth peer and family peer advocates, certified recovery peer advocates, and I called it my listening tour. Just like the governor had her listening tour, and because I wanted to see what were the experiences and just listen. That's really what I was doing, was listening. And what I got was I didn't know there were anyone else like me here. I didn't know that there was a community. I feel alone. Nobody understands my job. Nobody understands me. Um, my supervisor doesn't understand my work. I found things where youth peer advocates were being utilized in situations they shouldn't have been, in crisis situations, for example. And I found a lot of isolation. And so my first thought was I need to connect everybody. And so um, it started with Jay and Lena, actually, because Lena was a youth peer advocate in the residential treatment facility and she was all on her own. And no one knew at the time, but I actually purposely made it my point to come into the office every single Friday because I knew Lena was there for a full day and I didn't want her to be alone. And so that started this whole, like, what we called peer days. And we would all get together. And really, it wasn't a time where we would sit and, you know, talk about, oh, you need to do this, this is this, you're required to do. It was where we would just all talk and learn how to connect with each other. And Jay joined that. Shortly thereafter, I would say probably within about a month or two, Jay joined that circle. And so it grew from myself and Lena to myself, Lena, and Jay. Brian, who's on this call, used to join us. And for many people who don't know, Brian is also a family peer advocate, although he did not introduce himself that way. But and Brian and I were youth in the system together. So we all would meet and we would all just talk, and it was really a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I know that there was, Jay had expressed, interest in moving up, and I saw those things didn't exist in the peer world, right? In the peer workforce, there was no supervisory positions, or if there was, it was one, and it was like for a family peer advocate, you know. And so that sparked the idea of mentorship, and I like to think that I even supervise in a mentorship style. And I think back to your slides, Mimi, and it really is to foster growth um and connection and support. And out of that, Jay and Lena grew, it really they are the ones who took it to the next level, because they're the ones who started meeting with each other. And from there, we would add to the group. I would, bring everybody together and think about who's going to assign mentors. And it's not always based on who is, who looks on the surface to be the right person for you, right? But that's really where it came from, was this need. And I can tell you that's probably the need everywhere, because no matter, whenever I look at open positions for youth peer or family peer advocates, it is one position, and so the free piece of advice that I give to everybody is don't have one position. That's why nobody's applying. That's why nobody's coming to work with you, because you have one position. And we need connection. I need connection. You know what I mean? As a leader, I need connection. And I receive that too from being connected to all of the youth peer advocates and all of the family peer advocates, it's a mutual reciprocal process, and I think that it is wonderful. And so that was what sparked that idea, was this need for connection within my own organization, and really it's a greater need, right? Because we can see that across the state. So that's what started the whole project.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jennifer. I love the fact that you were able to take a look around and were just so cognizant as to what the environment was that you were creating as a supervisor, and then chose to find something to intentionally change that. And I love hearing that that was able to bring Lena together and Jay together and so many more avenues of connection in your agency. And I think you're right, is that that is one of the things that I even hear from a lot of YPAs, is that they feel alone. They feel isolated in their positions. And they also feel as though there's no one who understands their specific experience as a YPA, because sometimes they really are the only one at their agency. And they are surrounded by maybe a few FPAs, but they're really by themselves. And they're expected to solely speak for the youth voice or to solely advocate for the youth voice. And that can be a very heavy burden. So I very much appreciate you bringing that to the forefront. I do want to let everyone know that if you have any questions during this, please feel free to pop them in the chat. There will be a question and answer part of this panel, and so we'll take all those questions then as well. So after talking about that, I did want to ask, this question is actually for Lena. So how did mentorship help you shift your mindset about asking for help and being vulnerable in the professional space?
When I was assigned my mentor, who is Jay, I just began accepting that I was likely going to hand in my 2 weeks and go into the medical field and leave behavioral health as a whole. I was in a very dark place professionally, and it was into my personal life. I wasn't provided with a safe space or a brave space to even ask questions regarding my role, or more so the things that pertain to it. I thought to myself, why do I even need a mentor, and how is becoming someone's mentee going to help? Not only did I think that, but I also felt that my mentor, Jay, was just going to be like everyone else, not just professionally speaking, but personally. As someone with lived experience navigating the mental health system and being part of a justice impacted family, all I knew was being wronged, whether that was by the system or by people around me. The bravest thing I could have done at the time and did do was say to my mentor, I need help. It was definitely scary to ask for help and allow someone to see me in such a vulnerable state. But what shifted my mindset was how my mentor responded to my needs and who I was at that time. He demonstrated time and time again that he cared and I wasn't a bother. He reassured me consistently that I wasn't incompetent just because I had questions or didn't know something. My feelings were never dismissed, but validated. It was the first time in my career I didn't feel as though I had to keep building this wall around me, which benefited me outside the workplace. When navigating being a peer advocate and the difficulties that arise with the role, I was most definitely not alone. It felt as though I could grow into my role in a very secure space, which I did. Once I became both a mentee and mentor, I wanted to provide that experience to others, which motivated me to continue pushing myself to be unguarded and accepting of help in a professional space.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Lena. I love that you speak about your experience of starting out as mentorship and not liking it, not enjoying that part of the process, but also talking about how much you needed it. And I'm so grateful that you stayed in this space because your voice is so needed as a youth peer advocate. And I, just in the very short time that I've gotten to know you, I've seen just the way that you are able to accept those things like constructive criticism and that you are willing to ask those questions. And I'm so happy to know that you stuck it out and you found someone who helped you through that. And so having a peer really validate your experience was very life-changing to you. And I love the relationship that I've seen you and Jay have, just from that. It's so cute, and very playful and also so professional, but also personal. Like I can tell that you guys are truthfully friends to each other, and it's more than just I'm your mentor and you're my mentee. And I love that. My next question is for Angela. Can you share a moment where mentorship helped you better understand your role or your purpose within your organization?
Thank you for the question, Mimi. Um, I would say like I have to talk about a little bit backtrack to answer this question. When I first started as a youth peer advocate, I only thought I was the actual mentor. You know, that's all I thought. There was no real clarification when it came down to the job description. So the relationship between who became my mentor, which was at that time my supervisor, it was more of like we would meet one-on-one supervisory meetings and we'll talk over the caseload, and that's it. But when the relationship changed, it was when things started to change from a just let's talk about the clients, the participants, to let's do a professional development. And when he sat down with me and we were more on a personal basis rather than a professional, like there's always that professional aspect, but when you are human, when you show your human side to things, a person is more receptive to open up and be able to be vulnerable. So that time when my supervisor at that moment, Joshua Higgins, he sat down with me and he explained to me what was my role in the organization, what are the things that impact other aspects of the organization, and basically helping me understand that I am a service provider. You know, I'm not just a mentor. It's like that clarification of the role, the position, and that mentorship. That moment changed our whole relationship. And I have to admit, like even now that we are both gone to different places, we still have a nice connection and a nice professional friendship, just because of that mentorship, because he took it upon him to gather, to take me under his wing, and accept me as I am without trying to change the way I speak and the way I present myself. I've always been a professional, but um, I've always been a human. I am the way, I guess I would say I like to show my vulnerable side so my participants can understand I am a peer. And I am not here to be in a power struggle like that. So when you take away that power struggle from that supervisory and that peer, so that's why I am so pro peer supervising, sorry, peers, is because of that aspect. Because there's not that power struggle as much. And I would say for others, for supervisors who are not peers but are supervising peers, it's more of having that human side. Like it's okay to show your human side. It's not always like you did this wrong, 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 but more of a how can we help you do it better, in that type of lens. So, yeah, that was a great opportunity, a great moment, and it really helped me grow as a person, professionally and personally.
Thank you so much for sharing how your supervisor was able to step in. And I think that you're absolutely right. Part of this role really requires us to speak to our humanity. That's the entire purpose of peer support is to humanize all of us, to be understanding of everyone's different lived experience and what that brings to the table, but to not kind of put that in a negative light, but to make that very strength space. And so I love that your supervisor was able to meet you where you were, and then help you develop the skills necessary for you to better understand your role and what you could do best in your role as a YPA. And now, even furthermore, as an FPA. And I love that now you've grown into a different part of the workforce and are continuing to foster that mentorship and mentee relationship. For those of you that don't know, Angela is actually my mentor. And so I would not be at Families Together if it were not for Angela. My next question is for Jay. So, how has being both a mentor and a mentee shaped your leadership style and your professional growth?
So I'll start by providing a little brief story. Jennifer Fuchs actually, we worked in the same agency, and I actually had worked in like a more professional capacity, even though I had that lived experience. And Jennifer kind of came to me and described the role and said, like, if you fit the role, let me know. And she came to me at a time that I was really struggling with that, like, more professional pseudo clinical role. And so it was perfect timing. Um, and I had taken her up on it, and I had done the credentialing process and everything. And I don't know if she really knows how much that changed the trajectory of my life in a positive way. So then after becoming a youth career advocate and kind of learning a little bit more about being a youth career advocate, um, being in the role and then kind of being approached and saying like, hey, you've been doing so great with this. There's this there's Lena, there's this person, who's been struggling with like role clarity and is being put in these situations like Jennifer had explained earlier. um why don't you take a little bit of time, mentor her? I believe in you, I believe that you can do this, kind of like pushing me in that direction. And then seeing Lena, who was really strong and really powerful, had great potential. I can't I can't speak better about it. She was very good at what she was doing, and she also had a ton of barriers in front of her, most of which were out of her control. And felt like that sense of like purpose and wanting to kind of have that camaraderie and see other peers grow. So I took that on, and it ended up being, like I said, a very reciprocal relationship. Where yes, I saw Lena grow. I saw Lena challenge me, challenge other professionals in a way that like she was able to have her voice heard. And that made me feel very proud. But it was also, I learned a lot from Lena too, about things that I could be doing differently in, being a mentor. In my work, I learned a lot of things that maybe I didn't say right in front of Lena, but I was like, oh, now I got to take this and I got to do this in my work too. She almost kind of like flipped the script on me. And then I still have the photos of the day that I watched her sort of take on the mentorship role as well. And we have a picture of me, Lena, and that other person that Lena was supposed to mentor, and started to mentor. And that's a beautiful picture, a beautiful memory, for me. But really, just it all comes down to I got a sense of purpose from being a mentor, and I also gained somebody who is going to be a great friend for a very long time, I think. And Lena also gained a lot from me as well. And it, going back to that Venn diagram that you had, it really did hit all three of the points. It helped organizationally, it helped Lena personally, it helped me personally, it helped us professionally. And I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jay. I love that you talk about the reciprocal relationship that you get out of mentorship. So when Lena became your mentee, you didn't expect to learn from Lena, but Lena actually taught you a lot of lessons about yourself and about your leadership style. And is that not the point of using our lived experience to help others? Because that just enhances the peer workforce. Now you're able to better understand how you might be able to guide the youth that you're working with as a YPA, why they may not be receptive to the way that you've presented constructive criticism, because you've worked with someone in a way that they've been able to stand their ground, they've been able to advocate for themselves. In the same way that you said, you kind of have to talk the talk and walk the walk when you're a mentor, because you can't tell someone to do something and then not role model it yourself. And so you really do have to be in that space where you realize that even when you think no one's watching, someone is watching you in your professional growth journey. They're learning something from you, whether it's how you present yourself, how you're interacting with youth and staff, how you're advocating for yourself and your youth in your meetings. Like, people are constantly learning from you. And so I love that you were able to learn from Lena just as much as she was able to learn from you. Okay, my next question is for Jennifer, and I wanted to ask you, what strategies have you used? I know you talked about this a little bit already, but what strategies have you used to create intentional spaces for that connection and support among peers?
Mimi, the first thing that speaks to me is back again to those slides that we keep referencing, and that Venn diagram where that you talk about creating a safe place for mistakes and growth. And that was one of the first things I did, is tell everybody there's always a solution. You know what I mean? It's never a problem. There's always a solution. So if you make a mistake, it's okay. And you can come to me. You know what I mean? We'll have a solution. And so just highlighting the importance of communication, and if you can't communicate with me, find somebody to communicate with that you trust, um, uh, connecting everybody and being also that support for everybody when there isn't any other support, and allowing that same safe place and um, being on the same level as everybody, being transparent. Those were everything I did to make everybody feel connected. Everything I've done is very intentional. That like I said, I would come and I have all the youth peer advocates. It's most honestly, it is mostly the youth peer advocates when we have peer days, and it's my most favorite time of the week when we all get to sit down, because the youth peer advocates help me too. Like I got, I discussed, I have a youth experience. And so I still go through that. You know what I mean? It's something that you can't really say you ever end. And Lena has helped me so many times. Honestly, youth peer advocates have even helped me as a parent, with my own child. So it's really like, I can't stress enough just the importance of being together, allowing people to make mistakes in a very safe place and saying it's okay, it happens, and being and the transparency, right? Because you need to be able to trust one another. And so I tell everybody, I said, it's much easier for my mental capacity to just tell you what I know, and not have to worry about the different things. I try to be what I preach, exactly like what we're all talking about is, like Jay said, he needed to do the things he's saying. And so I also recognize that, um as a mentor for every, is I need to do the things I'm preaching too. I can't walk around and tell everybody, this is the ideal practice. This is, I have to walk the walk if I'm going to talk that talk. So those are the ways that I try. It is just trying to be on the same level also as a supervisor, as a leader, and to teach those skills to everybody else, because I, like Angela, I also believe in supervising peers, because um peers should supervise peers, just because it's a very different relationship. And if you should have done my job, you know what I mean, in order to be able to supervise me, or some form of my job. And so, and again, like we heard, nobody, you feel alone. And so you create community when you have peers supervising peers. And so that's another thing I've done to create connection, is I've created a hierarchy of leadership. There's a youth peer supervisor, there's family peer supervisor, and it's growing. We have our third supervisor right now, who is a peer supervisor, peer to peer. And um, I think that was another intentional safe place, right? People want to work here because there are there's other people like us, and you're in a position where you're being supervised by another person like you. And it's mentorship on another level, on an official level. We've created an official mentorship track, and it's open to anyone, right? Because we made it real. There's no education requirement for the youth peer support supervisor role, and so it's just a requirement of your lived experience and your youth peer credential. So again, like it's a way that nobody else, I think, is really thinking, but creating those management roles for peers to become leaders is another way that we have created that intentional safe place for everybody to grow and continue to make mistakes. And I also am very open, even with executive leadership, about my own my own journey, because if I put myself out there just like everybody else is putting themselves out there. I may not be providing direct services anymore, but I will still let you know that I am no different than every person on the workforce. And so those are I think ways to create this safe place for everybody, and to create a healthy, like, mentorship program.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jennifer. I love that you talk about the hierarchy that you've built, and that even in that hierarchy, there's really no difference. It's really built on this substantial observation of the fact that you now have lived experience supervising a peer. And so now that you've cultivated this skill within yourself, now you are fit to be in that position. But it doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden, quote unquote, better than this person, or as a supervisor, you have more power. You're not creating a power dynamic as much as you're creating a support dynamic, where then that person just really has a lot of experience to then support those other peers around them. And so I love that what you talk about is getting peers to move up in the system, where they're not just peers, where they can then find professional engagement and advancement through moving into a supervisory role, whether that's as a YPA, as an FPA. It's not limited to just one space either, where only a family peer advocate can then supervise a YPA. Like, no, you want a YPA to supervise a YPA. You want to make sure that someone has been in that space, that they understand what it's like to be in that space, and that they have the lived experience, and then that does cultivate kind of an informal but formal and professional sort of peer mentorship system within that, because now I have that lived experience. I know what it's like to be in your role, but I'm not in your role at this exact moment. So I can learn from you as you tell me what you're experiencing. The system changes every day. What are the things that you're struggling with? But I remember what it's like to be there. And so I remember what it's like to be stressed. I remember what my first meetings feel like. And when you can empathize and speak from that point of view, I think it allows people to be much more comfortable in the workspace with you. And I just love that that's the message that you're sending to everyone, is that this is the way that they should be thinking, and it's absolutely true. Peers should be supervised by peers. Endpoint, period. That's it. If you don't have that experience, it's just not the same sort of supervision. It becomes a top-down approach, and we always talk about the fact that there can be nothing about us without us. So if you don't have that peer and that supervision, you're not supervising from that peer standpoint. So I just love that. We always come back to that in conversation, as peers supervising peers. Alrighty, so my next question, as we're talking about this, is for Angela. What advice would you give to an organization that's aiming to cultivate strong mentorship practices?
Thanks again for the question. This one, it's, I want to say, like, I want to give a, I guess, like, I don't know what's the word, but basically, I am not as polished when it comes down to speaking. So that's like, so you guys should know. So I may say things kind of crazy, but I'm going to be brutally honest, because of from my experience, from my lived experience. Um, for an organization who is looking to cultivate what is mentorship, my suggestion would be to not look at peers as separate from the organization, to look at them as part of the team, because that is the mission of a peer, is to enhance your programming, your team, and we're not here for competition or to take your job away. We are here to support families. That is the end goal. And every individual is different. So some individuals may not need that high level of care that requires counseling or therapy, but they may be okay with seeing a peer professional. So even if it is a person or family is seeing peers, that could be an entryway for them to see a counselor, for them to see a therapist. Um, so not look at us as separate from the team or in competition, because we're not there for that. That's point number one. And then point number two, I would say, is the inclusion part. I felt at first in my lived experience, very separated, very isolated. I keep hearing that from everywhere, from all you guys. And the best thing I would say, recommendation you could do is, even if they're per diem, include them in team meetings. Like, there's team meetings, there's leadership meetings. Maybe not the leadership meeting, but team meetings. Like, even if it's out of courtesy, give them the option to partake in these meetings, and that would give them a sense of belonging, a sense of I am part of this organization, a sense that I'm not being excluded, and that a sense of them being welcomed and appreciated. And I would say that would help a lot with the retention part, because when a person feels appreciated, understood, and welcomed and part of a team, them understanding their crucial part of the whole organism, that would be amazing for when it comes down to, I would say, mentoring, what is it, fostering mentorship into organizations, is understanding, we are all part of a team and we're not in competition. And I would say the other part would be that, pay attention, like look at your peers, look at your youth peer advocates. um, I have to highlight, like Mimi. I became Mimi's mentor because I saw her. She came through the family peer advocacy, the BIPOC Healing Together, Family Peer Advocate Workforce Collaborative, and I saw a piece of me in her. I saw her potential, So and then I knew, all a person sometimes need is just one opportunity, just one opportunity to get them in the door and for them to just bloom. So having that, just be on the lookout. You see people who have potential, youth who have potential, like don't give them your back. Like you don't have to be their supervisor. You don't have to be in the same program. But having that connection, like, we are all part of the same organism. Um, and that's my spill. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Angela. I do just want to touch on a few things that you said. Number one, you bring this up all the time about not being such a polished speaker, and I want to tell you that that is a lie. We understand you. But I also want to bring that up in the space that we always talk about for youth. Sometimes our youth peer advocates may not present information to us in the very nice packaged box that we're looking for, because our youth don't present the message that way either. And so to be able to personalize with where someone's coming from, meet them where they are, is so important. And Angela, I love that part of you because you don't sugarcoat things, but you also are just authentically who you are. You communicate the way that you are, and I don't ever want you to change that. And I want the YPAs and the FPAs and everyone that hears this to know that too. Like, you don't have to change the way that you communicate because you're now put in this position. Agencies need to change the way that they listen. They need to change the ways that they are hearing, and they need to give you the space to be able to speak in the way that you are speaking, and they just need to hear you, because what you're saying isn't any different than what our youth are saying when they meet with us. And so don't ever change. And I also want everyone else to know not to change. And I thank you so much for bringing up that point that you saw something in me. I credit Angela so much to the growth that I've experienced in my professional journey. And I can 100% say I would not be sitting here right now presenting this TA call for Families Together and working for an organization that I love so much, that has given me so much heart and so much purpose. I have always loved training and growing the youth workforce, and I have always loved being in this role. And I would not be here if it wasn't for someone who said, I see something in you. And so I didn't have to be polished for her to see something in me. I didn't have to be finished or perfect. I just had to be myself. And so I think that we all should take that too, is that it doesn't always have to be a formal mentorship. If you see someone at your agency and they're struggling, reach out, be their friend, be their comrade, be that person that they can come to if they need help with something. Send them a message and just say, hey, I've got some free time. If you need help with X, Y, and Z, like, just let me know. It's all about reaching out and reaching back. And so if there's someone that you have grown ahead of, reach back. Nominate them for a position, for an award. Let them know that there's a meeting coming up, that there's a conference that they may be interested in. This peer workforce is about staying connected in every shape and way and form. And so just because you move out of a space doesn't mean you have to end that there. Angela has since aged out of being a YPA, and she's still growing the YPA workforce. And I love that so much, because you said, I may not have a space here anymore, but I'm still going to cultivate this space. I'm still going to let as many people know that this space is possible. And so I urge all of you to take that as well, and to make that your responsibility, and to make that your message that you share with others too. Even if you see something, I know that we have a lot of youth that aren't of age to be a YPA as well. Still let them know, I see something in you, and this is a pathway for you. We have spaces even here at Families Together where we urge youth from the ages of 12 and up to come be in this peer space. So it's always up to you guys to like see that talent, because again, reason you're here. Even if it's a youth that you're working with, let them know, like, hey, I see some strong potential in you. I know that you're working through your own crisis right now, and I'm holding your hand through this. But when you're done, I really want to see you pursue your own credential, and I want to see you sitting where I am and helping someone else because now you have that lived experience. So just keep passing that on. Um, Sorry, before I get emotional, my next question is for you, Lena, which goes back to what you were talking about with that peer relationship, that mentee relationship. So, how do you navigate giving and receiving constructive feedback within a mentorship relationship?
Receiving constructive feedback has always been something that I was never good at, if you will. I always felt as though constructive feedback was an attack on my character and who I was. My mentor, Jay, took the time to understand me as a person. He was able to see beyond the walls I had built, not just professionally, but personally, and conclude that I was simply someone who was hurting, and I was hurting in the workplace due to moral injury. Jay approached me with a non judgmental attitude. He always clarifies why he is giving me this constructive feedback. He would even ask me if it was okay to critique me on something before he would. His tone was always soft and never harsh. He always created a space for me to be able to respond to his constructive feedback and even allowed me to give some constructive feedback as well. It no longer felt like an attack on my character, but someone who genuinely wanted to guide me. There was this and still is this deep empathy and compassion we share and feel for one another and for those we serve, which made receiving the constructive feedback much easier for me. As a mentor, I take the same approach when giving constructive feedback to my mentees because Jay modeled it beautifully for me. I want to build rapport with my mentees so I know them outside of their titles in the workplace. I want them to know that there's absolutely no judgment on my end. A question can be asked a million times and I won't see them as incompetent or annoying. You have a shoulder to lean on, cry on, and someone who overall wants the best. Once that rapport is built with my mentee, as a mentor, I feel more comfortable giving constructive feedback because I know Billy Bob Joe beyond the surface. Before I provide constructive feedback, I ask myself, what am I critiquing? Why am I critiquing this? Does this critique relate to their role and responsibilities? When and where should I provide this feedback? And is my mentee in a space to receive my constructive feedback?
I have almost no words. My goodness, Lena, that was such a beautiful
Yes.
answer to this question.
Mhm.
I absolutely love it. I love that for you, you noted constructive feedback was something that was difficult for you. It was really difficult. And you're right. It can feel like an attack on your person. It can feel like someone is pointing out the nitty gritty in you, especially when it's something that you're working on and that you know is difficult for you. Like you're going into a new role, you're working on something, and this is difficult. I want to show up as my best self, but I'm having a hard time doing so. And so for Jay to see that in you, and to approach you with sensitivity. And I think that is the biggest thing is to approach with sensitivity. He humanized you. He saw you as a person. And I think the steps that you gave as well, I definitely will share, send those out as well when we send out these TA calls. Just that note of why are we critiquing this? Is this person in a space like these are absolutely questions that you should be asking yourself, whether you're a youth peer advocate interacting with a youth, whether you're a supervisor interacting with a YPA that you're supervising. Like these are absolutely questions that we want to be evaluating. Can this person even hear what I'm saying right now? Or do I need to give them a second to emotionally regulate? Do I need to give them a second to communicate with me as to what is going on? Did I ask permission? Did I ask them, are you in a headspace where sure this is okay? Can you accept this from me? Is this part of our role that we have, especially if you're just a friend, if this is more informal, and just thinking about that and empathizing with them and saying, how would I also feel if I got this feedback, so that you're delivering everything with a sense of love and care rather than an attack on someone's person. And I even like that you go as deep as to evaluating, is this even within the role? Is this something that I truthfully need to bring up with this person, or is this a personal matter that I just need to accept that this is just the way someone does something, and that that's also okay? It looks different, but it's okay. Um, and so I love that through your experience, you have gathered and found new ways to approach yourself when you're giving and receiving feedback, as well as now, because Jay so beautifully role modeled it for you, you're able to role model it for so many of the youth that you work with. So thank you so much for that. And my last question is to you, Jay, and it is, what advice would you give to someone who feels isolated in their role and is unsure about seeking mentorship?
So the first thing I wanted to point out a few things. The first thing I wanted to point out is that mentorship is such a critical tool for combating and mitigating isolation on multiple different levels. Like, look at Lena, like, and myself. Like, I think that both of us kind of felt a little isolated in different ways. And we were in the same agency, imagining that on a larger scale, which brings me to my second point. you know, um, I moved from Long Island up to upstate, and I'm seeing a huge difference on, what types of resources there are, how many resources there are. And so we can, through mentorship, we can grow despite something that looks kind of hopeless. Of like, it's only me. I'm the only person, and I am the only person in my agency. I'm the only person in my department. My supervisor doesn't, know how to supervise a youth peer advocate. I feel very isolated. So it might be challenging, but we now know it's not impossible. Mentorship kind of pushes us forward in that, and so that it's not impossible anymore. It's difficult, but less difficult as we integrate mentorship. And I wanted to also point out, a little bit of advice looking for mentorship. It's a supplement to networking as well. Mimi has spoken a little bit about her journey to becoming part of Families Together, and I have a similar story. As like, I applied for Families Together because of the encouragement and practical advice of Jennifer. That was what pushed me to go to the website and apply and send my resume and everything like that. And also the belief that Lena had in me. I wanted to show her empowerment. I wanted to show her the power of peers. That's what motivated me to apply, so that I could, show her and other peers that we can continue to progress. So I try to stay in contact with Lena, stay in contact with Jennifer to kind of pay all of that forward as well. So looking for mentor, looking for somebody to get you into that networking, maybe find a mentor within your network. And just I wanted to end on some concrete advice. Families Together events is a great, you're going to see them in the slides ahead. It is a great way to find a mentor, to build a network, maybe through your network, find somebody that might be, not everybody's going to fit the same with a mentor. You can't just look at, you might not just look at somebody who's an older and more seasoned youth peer advocate and say, yeah, I'm going to talk to that person. You might have to look through your network a little bit. You might have to find somebody who is a better fit. But there's a lot of us out there. If I look at my certificate that I have on my wall here, I'm not the only YPA. There's hundreds of us. So there's a bunch of people that we can connect with for different problems, different reasons, whatever. And the events that we have at Families Together can allow you to do that no matter where you are. Even if you're the only youth peer advocate in your whole agency, there's still people available throughout the state that can give you a little bit of a push.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jay. I second that advice so much. I think one of the biggest benefits that I have gotten from mentorship is that push. Um, there's this sense of responsibility to make your mentor proud and to make your mentee proud. And I promise you guys, it's not super heavy. It's not a heavy burden, some load, but there's just, they fill you with so much confidence that you know that when they tell you, like, hey, I really see you in this space and it is a space of growth for you, somewhere that you may not have already identified for yourself that you could fit, but someone is constantly telling you, like, no, I see these qualities in you, it does push you forward. And so I love the fact that, like, Jay and I have expanded our professional journeys to include such a huge organization like Families Together in the work that we've done simply because someone saw something in us. And so that's what I just want to urge all of you as well, is to know that, like, people see things in you and you too can see things in people, and you can continue to fan that flame and to just build that relationship and that camaraderie. I love the shameless plug for Families Together events, which I will definitely be giving you guys. I just wanted to end this panel with giving each of you an opportunity to just share, like, a very quick takeaway. So if there's one thing that you just wanted someone to know about mentorship that you just want to end with, I would love for each of you to just share your little takeaway for each of them. So I'll start with Jennifer.
I want everybody to take away that the connection and the support, even for myself as a director, like I don't have a mentor, or you know what I mean, like, or a supervisor who is a peer as well. And I never have had a peer supervisor, but I have had a mentor. I've had, and it doesn't have to come from your own organization, like Jay said, it can come from a network. And I really think that that's important because there are so many organizations and roles where there's no community of youth peer advocates, right? And so I think that it's important to talk about that, the network, because I seek mentorship from outside of my organization, and so don't stop there. If you don't have another person in your organization, look elsewhere. Like Jay said, come to the FTNYS events. I agree. I can't stress that enough. And also, I see something in every single person that walks through the door, and it's not even something that I might need. It's I see something, like when I see something that the youth need in every single youth peer advocate, because that's why they're here. And when I was a youth, I I wish that I had a youth peer advocate, and you know what I and there's always this need, right, when you're going through your journey, to talk to other people, right? Like if you were in the hospital or you were in a placement, you want to talk to other people that were there with you, and it's more because you want to be connected to other people like you. And so I that was the first thing I thought of when I heard about peer support. Is, you see, it's a phenomenon. It wasn't just me. And I ran to tell my mom that. Okay, at 40 years old, this was 5 years ago, I ran to tell my mom, you see, it wasn't just that I wanted to talk to other people. Okay, so just that importance, again, to stress that connection is so important, because it's the isolation that you feel in the community every single day. And I felt that isolation in the workplace every day before I entered the peer workforce. Is, I remember I would come to work and be like, I can't believe that, like, I work in a human services agency and I can't be a human, And so again, it's really about being human and the connection, and humans need connection to thrive, right? So we definitely need that. And that's what I want everybody to take from here, is to try to foster that connection. And if you don't have it right in front of you, look for it, because it's out there. So thank you, Mimi.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you for joining us today. It has been a pleasure. I'm going to pass the mic off to Jay. If you could just give us your ending thoughts, please.
Sure. If you've been watching the faces of all four of the panelists and the moderator, Mimi, I've been watching, as we were talking about our experiences, as we were talking about each other, there were these heart reacts, there were big smiles. I totally didn't start tearing up when Lena talked. That definitely did not happen. That second question, it got me a little bit. But that shows that at the end of the day, if you can take away anything else from it, nothing else, you're not alone. Like I said, there's hundreds of us. And if you feel alone, you don't have to be alone. Like, you're here in this call, or you found this video on YouTube, because I know it usually goes on YouTube afterwards. And there are a lot of resources, and there are a lot of us that you can talk to, get to know a little bit better. So carry that with you. You're not alone.
Thank you so much, Jay, and thank you so much for joining us on this, and also for even just being my mentor. Like, I started Families Together after you, and you have continued to help me grow in so many ways, even for just tips on how to even moderate this panel. And so I think that you continue to be a mentor in every space that you touch. So thank you for that as well. And I will pass it off to Lena.
Well, I'm getting a little emotional myself now. I've been emotional throughout this, and I'm trying to articulate really what I want everyone to take away from this without getting emotional. I want everyone to know, because when I was in that place, that very dark place professionally, it's okay. It's okay to ask for help. You do not have to keep it a P all the time. You don't got to be gangster all the time. You don't have to do everything by yourself. I know many of us have lived experiences of just navigating life on our own as children or adolescents and even into adulthood, and we feel the need to just do everything on our own. So what I want everyone to take away from this is it's okay to be vulnerable and say, I need help. I need some guidance. And that's just really what I want everyone to take away. That it's okay, because it's changed everything for me tremendously, not just professionally speaking, but even in my own personal life, and allowing people to come in and help me, or taking accountability, whatever it may be. But please just know it's okay to ask for help. You don't always got to keep it gangster with people.
For that, Lena, and you're absolutely right. Someone wrote in the chat too, being vulnerable is not a weakness. And that's very true. That's the very nature of the work that we do, is to be vulnerable and to show ourselves to everyone else so that they know that growth is possible, that recovery is possible, and that they can do this too. So I very much appreciate you for sharing that. And last but not least, I'm going to hand it over to Angela for you to wrap up your last minute thoughts.
Thank you. I want to second what Lena said. Yeah, it's so important, and it's so valuable when you ask for help. And you shouldn't feel less than because you're asking for clarification on something. It would really, really help out a lot in the long run. So I would say my point would be that when you become a mentor, you in some sense become a leader. And when it comes down to leadership, leaders must first learn how to follow. So it is okay to follow someone and understand things before you become a leader. And always have that in the back of your mind that when you are a leader, you have to set boundaries. That's very important, because if you're going to be teaching boundaries, then you have to keep your own boundaries, because at the end of the day, we still are professionals, and we want to role model that. So it is okay to be peers, but also always have that in the back of your mind that you are a professional. And yes, asking for questions, be, follow someone, learn their style, then took it to your own way, um, and basically pass it on. Like, don't forget to pass it on, pass the torch. I think that's how it's said.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I do want to note that I took a look through the chat and I didn't see any additional questions, which is why I extended the panel to just ask them about what their last thoughts would be. I'm going to just start sharing my screen again as we wrap up. So if anyone has any other questions or comments, you can put them in the chat. At the end, when all this information gets sent out, as we talked about. So yes, this video is recorded. It will go on YouTube. It is also sent out by Families Together for all of you that have attended. So you guys will also be able to access all four of our panelists' direct professional email accounts if you have any information as to whether or not you want to start your own mentorship program and you guys need some guidelines for that, or you're looking for just some mentorship within yourself. If you guys are ever looking for mentorship, please feel free to reach out to any of the Families Together staff. You can also reach out directly to YPA Credential at ftnys.org. There are tons of things. And so just as we go over the upcoming events, so our next TA call is actually not going to be next month. We are skipping the month of September due to our town halls, but our next TA call will be October 16th. I hope that you'll join us for the 5 types of self-care. We'll be going over the different ways to take care of yourself, which is right in line with what we've been talking about here, and participants will also have an opportunity to put together their own burnout prevention plans. So as we're talking about being great in the workforce, sometimes we also need to take a step back and work on ourselves. And so we will have the opportunity to do that at our next TA call. And then as we were talking about for all of the different Families Together events. So we've got a fun couple of things coming up that are still going to happen in September, despite us skipping for our TA calls. So we have the Lived Experience Cafe. Now, this is just an affinity space specifically for YPAs to come in. You can talk about just like what's going on in your position. So it's a great space that we have just started you can talk about what's going well in your position, what's not going well. We've had some people ask for advice. Hey, I'm having a really hard time engaging this client, or do you have any ideas? So it's kind of another place where kind of like our advanced 4-day coaching calls, you can bring us information like that. Again, we don't use any identifiers, but we're just here to help you with your position as well. It's a great networking space for people that are all around New York State that are in the YPA workforce. So a lot of times people are exchanging numbers, talking outside of the affinity space. And so it's just a great time to come in. Our next one will be September 24th. We also have our youth peers meeting. Please note that the date for this has changed. So we will now be meeting on the second Wednesday of every month from 3 to 4 p.m., but the time will stay consistent. So our next one for the youth peer meeting will be September 10th. Again, the youth peer meeting is for youth that are ages 12 and up. And so they do not have to be credentialed as a youth peer. This is, again, another affinity space, people to come in, ask any questions that they have in terms of professional development. And so we do sometimes have short kind of professional development spaces where we might be going over a couple of things that people are asking about. But if you ask for it in this space, you're gonna get it in this space. And so people have been asking about how to better communicate. And so the next time that we talk, we'll be talking about that communication aspect. So that will be coming up on September 10th. We also, I did just talk about the TA training. So that one we're skipping, but it will be back in October. We also have our Family Empowerment Town Hall series. The dates for this have not been announced yet, but if you are a YPA or if you know someone in your community, like we said, we're always seeing things in others. So if you see someone in your community that's a YPA or an FPA and you truly know that their passion is family empowerment and that they might be willing to speak about this for our town hall, they can go to the registration link. You can also scan it, as well as Yasmin has put it in the chat for both the YPA events and the family empowerment PDF, so you can download those. They'll also be sent out with a copy of the slides as well. And then we also have our Youth Peer Advocate Credential Advisory Committee. And so the YPACAC is made up of youth, young adults, youth peer advocates, and adult allies that are across the state. And so we are always looking for people who are ready to become leaders. They have the ability to attend. These are all virtual meetings. And so if anyone's interested in joining the committee, you can scan the QR code. We'll also be sending out a flyer with this as well. So there's lots of spaces for the youth voice to be heard. And then as always for these TA calls, we always want to make sure that we're doing exactly our best. And so if you have any commentary, we would love if you would go ahead and fill out the survey link. This will also be dropped in the chat as well. Please let us know how we're doing. We welcome all of your feedback. Again, these TA trainings are for you. So we always want to be making sure that the youth voice is heard. So if you have something that you want to learn, if you have something that you think would be valuable to the peer workforce, if you have improvements for us, please let us know so that we can continuously make sure that we are doing the best for the youth available. And then, as always, I just want to thank you guys so much for being here. I want to thank everyone on our panel. It was absolutely amazing to work with you guys on putting this together and to execute it today. I loved hearing each of your different opinions, and the different experience that you bring here is absolutely just, there's no value that you can put on it. It's just invaluable, the amount of kindness and camaraderie that you guys are trying to spread outside of what your normal role is. And so I thank you guys so much for continuing to grow this space and to really just have made this your passion and to make it the thing that you're willing to share with everyone. So thank you so much for being here. And as always, if you guys are interested, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can scan our Families Together logo there for our link tree. And if you need anything else, please feel free to get in touch with me. Again, my name is Maiko Mimi Phillips, and I'm the Youth Training Coordinator for Families Together. Thank you so much for joining us today.